Okay, I'm talking about in this video that questioning God is something point of very much interest. To think that we question Him as unconscious of what we're doing. So as it's felt, we do a lot of questioning Him as we feel it, not understanding our feelings, having really no understanding of how deep and deep our feelings are, how much the entity of what's felt in the spirit is alive and living, our feelings being so much more than we could possibly interpret. They communicate too. Uh, our feelings are a form of communicating ability of an entity, and we use our feelings or we don't. To question God about anything is something we can do not knowing we're even doing it. So only He would see that we're doing it, and we would certainly maybe think we're not doing it. So certainly when some people do question God, they'll do it in an unconscious manner, in a way that they won't know they're doing it. So they don't even know they're doing it. God would see it though. He would know they're doing it. So people would ultimately have a sense of that they're not guilty and they didn't do anything wrong, even if they had done a lot wrong. If they had made a lot of judgments against Him and questioned Him a lot, they would have no idea that they had ever done it. It would have been feelings they dealt with that they tried to sort out inside themselves, that they didn't know had anything to do with God or any subject that might have incriminated them. Certainly they would be incriminated. So most people don't understand, in a kind of form of ignorance that says, I didn't do anything. I haven't judged God or told Him He's wrong or questioned Him or tried to not do what He said or didn't do His will. Well, yeah, I mean, it's true that maybe all those things you just said are true, but it's also true that you could have done all those things without even knowing it and utterly thought you were not doing anything wrong and even felt innocent about it. And of course, ignorant about it you would be, but innocent about it, maybe you also would be. The thing is that we're not innocent, is what He'd say. We certainly are ignorant. And He would tell us that He could see right through us. And we don't even know what we're telling Him in our feelings, that certainly He could see everything we're doing. And everything we're intending to do, He could see that too. So the reality is that we tell on ourselves, we give ourselves away. We can't hide anything from Him. And of course, then what are we doing thinking we can? Some people think they can. So the first time I saw God, I was afraid and in fear. And I thought He was coming to kill me. Basically, I wondered if I would die when He came around, and I kind of thought I knew it was Him. I was very just surprised and shocked and thinking. I was also glad in some sense. There was a mix of feelings and emotions I had that were both happy that He arrived and came, and it was almost like if He was coming to kill me, I was glad and I couldn't wait, because I was like, I wanted to see Him the whole time, and I was wondering why I couldn't find Him the whole time. So it was like a twisted mix of fear and fearlessness, of ignorance and absolute wanting Him to come to kill me or come to save me, not knowing what He was going to do. Certainly thinking He might kill me and not save me, but hoping He'd save me and not kill me. If we question God about why He does what He does, we have to realize that He is doing everything that He does on earth right now, and it's happening to all of us. So He is causing conflicts. He's causing conflicts. The war in Ukraine is His doing. He is doing what God does, and we don't need to understand why He does what He does. That's His opinion. That's what He says, that you don't need to understand unless I want you to understand. And if I did want you to understand, it's true that all of the hardship and conflict on earth is happening because He wants it, that He demands it. that it's exactly the way he wants it. So understand that if he wants to have wars and conflicts and sickness and disease and death prevalent, and humans are literally in a life death process, like we're all being punished. This world is a place where human souls are getting punished for what they've been doing, and they don't even know what they've been doing. They forgot what they've been doing. The charges against them are utterly not even in their awareness. So that how can they defend themselves if they don't even know what they've done? It's true. They have not remembered what they did. And so the charges against them are sticking still. If you are aware God is with you, and if God is with you and you're aware of it, then anything he is showing you or allowing you to observe or see, especially himself, he is not going to be happy with either both his decision to even let you see anything or come to you and even let you observe that he's there, if he thinks that anything he might show you is something that you would not only disagree with, but maybe think is really wrong or bad, or that maybe he's really wrong or bad, in fact, because what he's doing is utterly not okay. Well, I mean, if he thinks that you're going to think that, he certainly won't come to you and show you anything. And you certainly won't have any information for the rest of your life. And you certainly won't ever see him or know him, because he's already aware that if you find him because he finds you and allows you to see him, he allows you to witness his presence, then he's giving you a privilege, which is that your relationship to him would be tangible, and also that it would give you everything you want, the confidence that you know he's with you. You have to see it. It has to have proof. And if you don't see it, you won't have the confidence utterly. You have to hopefully pretend it up. Maybe try to make it real. No man may question God. Now that is something that I'll tell you is true, but the fact is that no man may question God. It doesn't mean that they're not going to do it. Every man questions God, and they all do it. Every one of us does it. Even I do it. But the way that I do it, I'm told, is that I look at what he's doing, knowing that I'm not God, I'm a man. And so knowing that God is doing what he's doing and he's God, when I'm looking at what I'm being shown that he's doing, maybe I'm not being told why he's doing it. I'm just being shown what he's doing in this world with all of us and what's happening. And I don't agree with it, but I really don't agree with it. I think it could be disturbing to see what he's doing. And when he's showing me what he's doing, showing me like as if he's not proud of himself, but as if he's God and he knows exactly what he's doing. So he's not doing anything wrong. There's no mistakes he's making. And when he's showing me what's going on and what he's doing, my feeling is I certainly wouldn't do what he's doing. I certainly don't even know if I approve of what he's doing. If I don't approve of what God is doing, am I honest enough to really utterly let him see that thought, that he's going to witness me thinking against him, like you don't want what you think. You don't want it. You wouldn't do what I would do, but you think what I'm doing is wrong. Is that right? And I'm God and you're not. Ultimately, it's this terrifying feeling to think that you're opposing God in your thinking process. Yeah, you're not in agreement with him. I certainly didn't think anything he's doing on this earth is okay. And so I'm also wondering what I would do if I was him. And certainly it was nothing he would do. So I'm finding myself in a disagreement with God. Look, but he's showing me what he's doing and why he's doing it. I'm not sure why he's doing it. He hasn't told me yet. He's really showing me what he's doing. Everyone's dying, sickness, disease, conflicts, death, and we're all being punished, and we're hurting. There's depression, there's suicide, there's people killing each other. The people aren't getting together. We're separated society. We're not in agreement. We're not in cooperation. Our own government's not really in cooperation with itself. Everything's just like completely torn up and going down south. It's exactly the way he wants it. It's exactly the way he demands it to be. And so all the problems we're having, it seems, are, well, his doing. Now, at least he's taking 100% credit for it. And he used the word credit, like as if what he's doing is not wrong, but it's more like I may not question it. The fact that I do question it is like, am I guilty? Like, did I just bust myself and am I going to be punished now? It's too late. God can see that I clearly wouldn't do anything that he would do. That in fact, I don't think what he's doing is right, or even correctly. I did in disagreement with him. The fact that I'd be sitting talking to God is not funny. It's not funny whatsoever. The fact that I would be talking to God and actually he'd be talking, showing me himself so I could witness his presence and the privilege I get is pretty damn awesome. So I should be very thankful for it and also humbled. And he's telling me and showing me what is going on. And I'm telling you that if I question God, it would be because I did it because it had to be done, because you better do it, because if you don't even know what he's doing, and then when you find out what God's doing, and you will definitely not agree with it, and you might even say, "What the hell are you doing, God? Why are you doing it?" So understand, when he's killing people, murdering people, making them sick, destroying societies, having huge wars, all the conflicts are God doing what he's doing. He wants to do it. Don't tell me he's not going to want to do it. He said, "I'm doing it for a reason." Okay, great. So I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be upset at God for what he's doing if I look at him with a real truth and I'm being honest. Then if I'm brave enough to be doing what I'm doing, I mean, it's like almost like I'm asking to die or something. I'm challenging God, like I'm saying, God, like you're just wrong, or why are you doing? Certainly, if he shows me what he's doing, and he has shown me what he's doing on this earth, and even to me, to taste death when it tastes good, and you're starving, is ultimately something you'll eat. So if you're being fed death, you would eat it. And if you're starving and being fed death, it would taste good. And ultimately, you'd like to eat death, because if you had nothing else to eat, you'd be thankful to eat death and have death as your only source of food, because it would be good, tasting good enough if you're starving and you have nothing else to eat. So if you're being force fed life, and it didn't taste good at all, it was sickening. So if God was shoving life in your face and life down your throat, and you were choking on it, and asking him, "Why are you killing me, God? Why are you putting life down my throat and living this in my mouth? You're choking me with life, forcing me to eat life. I don't like the taste of life. I only like the taste of death. Give me death and give me something that tastes good." Well, ultimately, I wouldn't say that, because if I knew what I was saying, I certainly wouldn't say, "Give me death," or that it tastes good. I'd say, "What the hell? You mean death tastes good to me? I didn't know that. Were you telling me that I'm actually liking the taste of death? Well, you're actually nothing else. You're getting bad. You're not going to get nothing but death. And you better like it and thank me for giving it to you, because I'm going to give it to you and you're starving. You got nothing else to eat but death, and I'm feeding it to you. So you can thank me. But if you don't want to thank me, I'm still going to feed it to you. And I don't care what you think. Ultimately, it's not very good for someone to see that God feeds them death and then doesn't expect them to say thanks. But ultimately, when God's force feeding you life down your throat, you will choke on life and think it's even worse than death. And so, truly, if God's trying to bring you back from already feeding you death for so long, if he ever decides to feed you life again and give you life, if he doesn't kill you, if you actually survive, then it's because he's force feeding you life suddenly, and you won't like the taste of it, but you'll certainly think he's killing you now. So the moment that God gives you life instead of death, you will suddenly flip out and think in your emotions that he's now force feeding you death, in fact, and you'll choke on it. It'll be life that he's trying to force down your throat, not death. He was giving you death the whole life before you ever started dying. So you were being fed death since you were born. You were eating it, liking the taste of it, thinking it was giving you life, and it was certainly killing you, not giving you life. You were eating death your whole life while you were living before you started to actually die or get sick or get old. Death was what your food source was, and you were getting nothing else. When you suddenly were being at the point where you're old or you're sick or God's killing you now, you would find that the moment that he starts feeding you life instead of death, it's a moment where you start thinking he was starting to feed you death actually for the first time, because you would choke on that life and it would taste terrible, utterly like broccoli. How could you feed me that broccoli that's good for me, that it will save me? Or spinach, raw spinach. I can't eat it. It's disgusting. So ultimately, life is disgusting when you eat it, when you taste it. And when he's force feeding it down your throat, you certainly won't think he's saving you. You'll think he's killing you. And you certainly won't think it's life that you're eating. You'll be aware that the time in your life that's come when you're getting older or sick or dying, well, it'll be obvious to you that you've been living all along healthy enough. And of course, when he starts shoving life down your throat, you'll think, well, it's definitely death. And there's no way it could be life. So you certainly think he's killing you, even if he's saving you. When men are in control of the world, they seem to think that God's will is something real enough that while they attempt to enact it or be doing it, they use their own spirit or their own self to interpret what it is God's will. And it's a fact that men are doing God's will, and it's in God's name, but it's in man's name, and it's not God's will. Many churches are not even in the presence of God, and there is no presence of God in their church at all, ever. He withdrew his presence from many churches, and he's not in church. He's not there to listen to them when they pray either, at all, ever. Now, the fact that some churches have God's presence and he's still in some churches is just a fact as well. And if his presence is in a church, then they are praying to him, and he may actually be able to hear them, but he won't hear them if he's withdrawn his presence, because he won't be there. There won't be an ear to listen. And so if there are churches on a mass scale without the presence of God in them, and that's what they represent and sell to the public, come to my church with no presence of God and pray with us, he won't hear us. We know this. Church seems silly and idiotic to anyone that would think that I'm going to go to church and pray and they're not going to hear anything. God's not going to hear me at all. To know that in your feelings is enough to make you say, I don't want to go to church. And to think that some churches have God's presence and some don't. And you don't know that. Understand, because you know that at least one church didn't have his presence for sure. And so you're thinking in your feelings, you're feeling and you're not thinking anything. You know for a fact that you're going to go to church and pray and God's not even going to be there. Well, how do you know that? You don't know that, do you? How do you know that then? Because you are feeling it, that it's ridiculous to go to church and I don't even know if God's going to be there. But understand, if God's going to be at another church up the street, then he is going to be there. Your feelings don't know that, because all they know is the church is the church, wherever it is. And if God's not going to be there, he's not there. So you would fail to see that some churches might have him, and that you even might need to find the church that he's in, rather than just realize that many churches he's not in. So he won't be there. Your feelings can't try to sort out the truth when your feelings are trying to understand, is God in church or he's not in church? Your feelings are not able to think on any level that can decipher that some churches he might be in and other churches he might not be in. So my feeling says he's not in some churches, and all churches are churches. And if he is in some churches, well, they've already said he is in some churches. So the fact that I feel like he might be in some churches is just a claim they're making. And it might be true, but I won't feel it's true, because I'll know damn well he's not in some churches and they're all churches. So if God is not in some churches and they're all churches, he's not in any of the churches. obvious to me. My feelings will feel it. They'll definitely think it too. I won't know that I made a big mistake by casting the church away or even thinking it was worthless, because I need to find a church where his presence is at, where he is. And then I am going to church and finding God. So I need to do it. It's just that if I go to the wrong church that doesn't have him, then what am I doing? What are they doing? It's all ridiculous. God tells me to be of good cheer. And he is like almost like an Englishman would speak to me. And it's not really funny, but uh, I'm always attached to England and English history, and the past is England. And it's not that I'm from America. I'm not from America. I'm from England. I come from a Plantagenet line of Plantagenet men that were split off to two families, the Yorks and the Lancasters. My family was a warring, bitter, angry, just vicious fighting force in the War of the Roses. It was all about my family. Much of my family was the start of the War of the Roses, and so there was a bitter struggle between feminine and masculine, between wife and husband, it was a bad war between Yorks and Lancasters, trying to instill the presence of the divinity into mankind, into kings and queens, into a society and a system. The Lancasters wanted to put women in charge and ultimately let the men lead by letting the women lead if they did it right, at least pleasing the men. So in the Lancastrian line, there was a cooperation between men and women that was both good, better, and in fact, and called superior to what York was doing. And York was a single-minded line of men that were father figures in the sense of the spirit. The York family line, or the York bloodline, was absolute single-minded men and father figure. So it was not including a wife or a daughter as an equal, but as a something you take care of because they're fragile or they need help. Ultimately, he wouldn't look at his wife as an equal. He'd look at her as a servant woman or a good girl that needs to do what he tells her, because he's ultimately a York and he's trying to be a single-minded father figure in charge, and he's doing it. So he's actually not wrong. The reality is that the York men would actually have happier wives and daughters, and if you could even imagine that the daughters and the wives of the York men were kind of enslaved, meaning they didn't have freedom. A York wife to her husband was ultimately, well, she had to do what he said, and he had not just the final word, but anything he said was final. And ultimately, he was the head of the household, and the York man demanded that the way life should be lived for everybody is that the woman of the household is doing her job, cleaning, cooking, helping, having the kids, taking care of the kids, and the father's leading as kind of a godhead, and he does it because he's doing it, and it's not pretended, and it's actually real. So the York man's not wrong, and understand the happiness of an enslaved woman in the York line was incredibly interesting, and God would show me this. He'd say, do you know that the enslaved women in the York line that were just kind of servants to their husbands, they had no choice. They were happier women, much happier women than women that were in the Lancastrian line that were free to rule, which were unhappy and much unhappier. And I'm like, are you kidding me? God's telling me this. He's telling me that the women that were enslaved by York single-minded men who were thought to be chauvinist asses, well, they were truly just being God and in charge, telling her to listen and do it. She's told. Ultimately, God told me that the women in the York line were happier by far than the women in the Lancastrian line that were actually given the authority and actually given some charge. And that just doesn't make sense. You telling me that the Lancastrian line was a husband and wife. Now the husband would give the wife some kind of an air of idea that she has charge. So he'd give her some kind of, yeah, honey, you can rule. And he said, you can rule. I'll call you back, Casey. I'll call you back in a minute. Um, okay, I'll call you back in a minute, Casey. I just got a phone call, but let's see. So in the Lancastrian line, the women were supposed to be given some authority so that women would prefer that the Lancastrian line should survive, that the way of life of the Lancastrians was a family. It was a bloodline of Lancastrians. They were kings and queens and royalty, and ultimately they had some idea that women could be equals to men, and so the men would tell their wives they have charge of the house. You could rule the house, honey. You could you're the queen of the house, and when I'm gone, and you're in charge of the kids. You get to rule. And so the woman, Lancastrian woman, was not a servant mother taking care of her kids, knowing the father's going to be back. She's acting like a servant when the father's gone. And the York line, whatever she's doing in the Lancastrian line, she's walking around like a queen, thinking she's in charge of her house. And the husband's leading her to believe that. And it's probably true until he overrules her. So the Lancastrian man tells his wife, honey, you're in charge unless I overrule you. And so as long as you're doing a good job making me happy, you can run everything. But anything I tell you at any time, you have to do it. So ultimately, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. If you're in charge, then lead the whole house. Then you could do it. And ultimately, uh, if she did it right, then the Lancastrian man, who was really in charge, would actually let her believe she's in charge, and she could even enact that truth, go around kind of believing it and doing it. She was in charge in a sense until she wasn't. And the Lancastrian man would completely relent to his wife and let her rule as long as she did everything he wanted and was doing what pleased him. So yeah, she just had to support the idea that he's the one who's really in charge, but she could do it. And the women weren't happy because they didn't really get the charge. They didn't really get the Lancastrian women were only told that and then allowed to do it, but they had no charge, no spirit in them that was in charge. So the spirit that was in charge was in the men. And ultimately, some of those Lancastrian men would give that spirit to their wives, and then they would like it, and it would be real. So if a man in a Lancastrian family gave the spirit of himself to his wife and let her lead with it, he would lose it himself. Now, he would then not do it. So there was two choices of the way the Lancastrian man could do it. And it was one, he could, tell her she's in charge and not give her the spirit because he wants it. He needs to be the one with it. Ultimately, by telling her she's in charge and he's not going to give her the spirit, it's ultimately something she'll feel is completely wrong, even if it's right. And she'll be allowed to rule as without the spirit in charge. She can't have it, but she could rule because she can't have it. She'll be able to rule now without it. They'll let her do it. She'll feel it's false and it's wrong and it's not real. And he's not really putting her in charge. So the woman in the Lancastrian line will be allowed to act like they're in charge and think they're in charge, but they won't be. Some of those women will just do it. Like they'll just do it like, well, this is the best I got. I get to at least act like I'm in charge and I can prance around like a queen and they let me, as long as I'm a good little girl behaving servant queen. And so the men will either be not giving their wife the actual spirit in the charge because they need it themselves. That means they cannot put their wife in charge if they're going to keep it themselves. And the York men will point that out. If you think that you can give your spirit that's in charge to your wife and let her have it and you lose it, a York man would say, are you going to give your spirit of God of charge to your wife so she could use it and you won't have it? And the York man would say, you are ridiculous to think that I'm going to give my spirit in charge to her and she could keep it and I won't have it because I won't have it. And ultimately, what it means is that the women in the Lancastrian line, since they're not really given the authority, but they're told they're given the authority, and since it's not really given to them, they have to either act like, yeah, they have to go along with the pretense and say, fine, then if I can't really have the spirit in charge, I'll just be, but you're saying I could be in charge? Well, then I'm going to go around without the spirit in charge being in charge. And ultimately the men will let her do it because she could be a happy little girl that's pretending she's the queen and she doesn't have the spirit in charge and she's not getting it. And ultimately the York man would just tell her that right out front, say, you're not going to get my spirit in charge. I'm the man of the house. I keep my own spirit, the spirit of God. It's me. It's the singular masculine and I'm ruling with it. Ultimately, if a man was being honest with his wife, he would tell her that, I'm sorry, honey, but you can't have my spirit or be in charge with it. I'm having it and I'm in charge with it. And ultimately she could realize that if she thinks she could be in charge, without his spirit, he'll let her do it. But if she is going to try to be in charge without his spirit, she can't do it. She'll need his spirit to do it. He's in charge with his spirit doing it. And ultimately, because of that, either the man in the Lancastrian line is a traitor and a liar to his wife because he'll have to act like he's going to let her be in charge. I mean, he's not going to give her the spirit. And the other thing is if he does give it to her, he's going to be a lost, ruined man in a while. Any man in the Lancastrian line that would actually give his wife the charge, the spirit in charge that he has, that he's supposed to be possessed by, he's a father and figure and ruler of the house. He's supposed to be heading of the house. He's supposed to bring the will of the house together and line it up. So the men that would give their spirit away to the women to let them be in charge, to love their wives and say, you can rule, honey, go ahead and take my spirit and take it away from me and go rule with it in the house. And yeah, you'll love it. Well, ultimately the man not only won't love it, but he'll be at a loss of his own spirit and at a loss of his God and the spirit in charge within him. He'll certainly be ruined. So he won't feel like it's okay. Get what he did. So when he does do the right thing and give his wife his spirit so she could be in charge of it, he'll certainly feel like afterwards, oh my God, I just gave my wife my spirit and that she's now has it and in charge of it and I don't have it anymore. What have I done? Well, what you've done is you might as well kill yourself now, you idiot. You just gave your wife your freaking spirit and you don't even have it anymore. Now she's happy and running around in charge with it. You idiot. What the hell are you doing? Well, I mean, you could tell a Lancastrian man that, but he'd say, damn, I thought I was being nice and trying to be fair. Well, you didn't know what the F you were doing, did you? Trying to be nice and fair. You give her your soul and she could have it now. It's not fair for you, is it? Is it not fair for you? It's not fair for you that you just gave her everything and she has it now and you don't? What are you doing? Well, I'm slowly going to commit suicide next week. And a month from now, I'll be killing myself or just not even want to live anymore. I'll be depressed. You certainly will be depressed at a loss of your soul, and she has it. She'll certainly keep it from you and trot around the house in charge with it, telling you what to do. How are you going to deal with it? Lancastrian man would not be able to deal with it. He would be fair to his wife, and then he would utterly give her what is his and what he should have, and she should not have it. If you asked a York man if she should have it, well, should I die for her to give her my soul? Why don't I just die and she could have my spirit? Since I'll be dead, I won't need it. If I'm alive, I do need it. So she's welcome to my soul when I'm dead, but when I'm alive, I want my soul in my head, not hers. So ultimately, the York man who's a single-minded asswipe is going to be the one who's actually right and true, because he's actually going to be trying to protect himself from losing his soul and giving it to his wife. She can't have it. Now, God is here with me now and says that I am not to be touched. Not a hair on my head shall be touched. And anyone that thinks of harming or damaging my reputation, as it already is damaged and ruined, at least in some sense, because I'm doing what God wants, not what man wants. And man wants me to do what man wants. It's not what God wants. And I am talking to God. And he is saying, good job, that you are doing what I want. And the rest of the world of men are not doing what I want. And are doing exactly what I want. as I command them to do. So he's telling them to do whatever they're doing wrong. And so they're doing what he said. Do you understand what I've just said to you? That God is not saying that the world of men is wrong. He's saying they're only doing what he told them to do. And if they're wrong, it's just because they're not doing what he said. They're certainly also doing what he commands. And he's commanding them to do a lot of things. And they don't have a relationship with him. They don't know what he says, or when he's with them. They don't know if he's with them. They wouldn't know what he's saying. They don't even. The relationship that men have with God is blind and by faith, and there's no tangible result to be had, which means God can't talk to you and show you who he is, because if he does, you'll actually see him. And if you actually see him, it won't be what happens in all the churches in this whole country or even in all the world, because religions don't see God, not ever. Not in church, not when they pray, not at home, not when they go to bed, not at night, not in the day, because they don't have a relationship with God whatsoever during their relationship with God the whole time. And so truly they do have a relationship with him, because they're having a relationship with God in a negative way, and it's out of their sight. It's like they're wearing blinders. God's with them, and they wouldn't know. And when he leaves them, they certainly wouldn't know. They don't know when he's there and when he's not. Only he does. Sometimes he's never there. They would think that he might be there all the time. So the whole thing is, all people are being punished on earth. No one is allowed to speak or talk to God. And talking or speaking to God is punishable by death or life if God wants them to live after they defy him and insist on a relationship that's tangible. If they rebel against God so badly, saying, I have to see you, I have to talk to you, like I'm not going to accept a faith-based relationship, that I can't even see you, and I don't even know if you're listening to me when I'm praying to you. Are you an idiot, God? If you're an idiot, God, then why are you doing this to me? You're punishing me by the fact that you're making me have a relationship with you, blind and dumb. And I don't even know if you're here. I have no confidence, no faith. I can't be in my mind at peace knowing that it's God with me, because I don't even know if he's with me. Maybe he's completely not, and I'm just praying to myself, and I'm the only one here. So because of that, he's understanding. Yes, it's true that I insist you have a relationship with me, and you are not going to witness it, that you're going to be not competent. You're going to be questioning me and yourself. You're going to wonder, what the hell? Why are we having a relationship with God and he's not even here with us? It's true. If his presence is here with us, it's not being shared with you or your interpretation of what you observe, because you're not allowed to observe anything. So if we know this, you're not allowed to observe anything. It's why you're mad in the first place. It's why you're upset in the first place, because you're not allowed to have a relationship with God that you can actually share in. It's just that he'll have a relationship with you and you won't know it, because he'll speak to your feelings in your heart. And when he does, your brain won't be involved. Your ego won't be allowed. Certainly, even if you don't have an ego, your head won't be allowed either. Your consciousness will never be allowed to hear the words he says or know what he's saying to you at any time, because all you'll be able to do is feel what he said to your heart and your feelings, and you won't know what it is. So you'll have to interpret it. What did God just say to me when he's talking to my heart? Well, it'll be up to you to tell yourself whatever you think he does say to you. And you might tell yourself any story, and it could be accurate or completely inaccurate. So whatever he says to you will be up to you, and you're free to lie to yourself in the interpretation. You're free to tell yourself that whatever you feel that God's telling you in your heart, you're free to tell yourself any story you want. And he says, tell yourself whatever you want, because if you actually don't lie to yourself or me, then you'll actually tell yourself the true story. So you'll know what I told you, even if you don't. So ultimately, God's claiming that if our heart is true, if we're not liars to ourselves or others, and he's not even saying that we won't see the truth even if we are liars, but truly, then we'll have to redefine what a liar is, and that's a different story. Understand that he'll tell you that you may literally tell yourself anything, and I'll support it. since I'm not going to talk to your head and you're not allowed to even hear me because you won't see me either and you won't know me either. When I talk to you, the relationship I have in you is counting you out. You're not in it. It's just with your heart and your feelings. That's all that I talk to. And so it's not fair to us. What we'll do is be mad at God, saying it's not fair that you're having a relationship with my heart, but not my head, that I can't even witness you're here. You're not tangible. You're nothing to me. You're not even existing. While you're existing, I'd say maybe you're not. Is it fair that God has a relationship with us like that? Yes, it is. And it's a fact that it will remain in force for the remaining future time without any consideration to be changed. Man shall not have a relationship with God like I'm having it. Certainly not. They will not be allowed. And the privilege I'm getting is pretty awesome. So, jealousy is a problem. People will be jealous of what I'm doing because everyone wants to be able to do what I'm doing, and you could die for it. He'll kill you for trying to insist on a relationship with him at the level I'm doing it. To talk to God carries a sentence of death if he doesn't want you to talk to him and you won't shut up. So how can you literally then be with God and have a relationship with him and actually not be scared to death? Well, certainly you would be scared to death because if you don't know any of this, you certainly feel it all. And if you want to tell yourself that he's not going to kill you when he comes, it's actually going to be that he saves you. You might be right because he might come to kill you. And why he's coming, you might be telling yourself he's coming to save you. And if he is coming to kill you and you're telling yourself he's coming to save you, he might actually change his mind if he really believes you believe it. So it's up to you whether you're getting saved or killed. And ultimately, you could change it in many ways because God might actually not kill you if he thinks, well, you think I'm saving you? Well, why would I save you? And ultimately, maybe you could entertain him and say, well, because I work for you, do your will, help you, do whatever you wanted. And ultimately, I tell you when you're wrong. And that's the biggest thing I'd do for you, God, is I'd tell you when you're wrong. And I wouldn't be afraid to tell you when you're wrong. Oh, and you would tell me when I'm wrong a lot. You'd probably try to correct me, wouldn't you? Oh, yes. What other good would I be? If I would follow you, God, and I wouldn't question you, and I wouldn't look at what you're doing and say, why are you doing it? You should do something different, God. Well, God would say, man doesn't dare question me like that. And man dies for that, for questioning me like that. No man questions me like that. They're not allowed to do it, but I'm doing it. I'll do it. I'll help. You think you're helping me by facing me and questioning me. You think you're trying to help God do the right thing since he's not doing anything right, is he? Well, I mean, if everybody's fighting wars and killing each other and we're dying of cancer and disease and we're all freaking aging and shriveling up and none of us are going to survive this life and we all get to die and death is the result, are you kidding me? Is it okay, God? It's not. Not a minute of it is. What do you think this is a goddamn reward, this life? It's a punishment. It's nothing more than a punishment. Okay, Dennis, do you think you know the truth now? That I'm here to punish the world, actually? They're under a punishment? Why do you think they're all suffering from disease and death and plague and violence and conflict everywhere? Yeah. And why do wars happen constantly and there's no break? They're always fighting. The wars are going on nonstop, forever, all the time. Somewhere, it's a massive conflict somewhere. Okay, so wait a minute. Who's God here? You or me? Well, you're God. Well, then I say what's going on in this world is what I want to happen because I'm creating it. I'm making it happen. It's my will to have these conflicts, to have people die of sickness and disease and drop dead of plague. It's all my will. Well, if that's true, I can't complain and say that you're wrong. I'm not wrong, but you can complain. But you're just complaining about what I'm doing, and you're right. But I'm God and you're not. So you're trying to tell me that I think that you're wrong because it's obvious to me what you're doing. Yes. And you're also being very observant and honest and truthful about facing me, telling me right to my face that fact that I'm God and you're not. Don't question me. And I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And you're not God. So you won't tell me I'm wrong and you won't try to correct me. But you know that I would and will and try and do because I don't agree with what you're doing, God. Oh, I know. But you also don't have any of the facts. It's true, I don't. And I also have a feeling that if I did have the facts, I would agree with you. Well, you already felt that, didn't you? I did. I certainly felt that if I knew what the hell was really going on, I would support God 100% and continuing this world in a punishment, conflict, ongoing constantly in a suffering, sickness, death, and disease, constant cancer. We're all aging, shriveling up, slowly dying. It's a punishment. It's a programmable biological punishment under a cellular program that our cells carry out. It's called death. Cellular death happens because God programmed it into our chromosomes. We're actually programmed to slowly self-destruct on a cellular level over a period of 70 to 120 years. Some people it happens faster and some slower. It's a punishment God programmed to our chromosomes. So we die because God punished us, and He's punishing us on time, lighting a fuse to a firecracker. Once you light the fuse, you're born, and it will blow up, guaranteed. So the end result of being born and given life is death and destruction or blown up. It's exactly what He chose to have happen. It's what He wants to have happen, that we all die in the end. So it's as the bird flies, the man tries to fly in the general right direction in flight. The man, like the bird, is trying to get to a destination, and the air is flying towards his destination. The bird does not know where the destination is. The bird is flying in the general direction, trying to get to the destination wherever it is. And if the bird takes too many rests and stops too often, he will fly short distances, and each time in different directions, never getting anywhere, really. So if the bird stops a lot and rests a lot, it'll fly short distances and maybe go this way and maybe go that way next time, and then back to here again. It's just right where it started. So the bird will never leave the area. It'll stay right in the area. It's not going to get to the destination, and it doesn't want to. And the bird will never get to the destination and doesn't even try it because the bird's not going to do it. So how does the bird get to that destination? By flying for long periods of time in the same general direction and not resting and not stopping intentionally. So tiring itself out. So if the bird wants to actually get somewhere, it can't stop to rest because maybe it won't know that when it stops, when it flies again, it'll just go the same direction it was going, or even the opposite direction back to where it was. So if the bird is not even knowing that it has to get to a destination or where it is, if the bird doesn't do kind of a general behavior that's correct, which will be flying in the general right direction, not knowing what it is, and how is that going to get the bird to the destination if the bird flies in the right general direction for long periods of time, refusing to rest? It will actually get somewhere, and by the time it actually has to rest, and it's tired out because it's flying so long in the same general direction that it actually is in a new entire area because it wouldn't stop and rest. It actually got somewhere. So the birds can't stop and rest, and they can't certainly do it a lot, or even think that they can kind of kick back and do whatever they want because they're not even going to try to get to their destination. Then they'll just literally they'll stay in one area and not even leave. Truly, as the ball bounces and it lands where it may not, it lands where it may not. As the ball bounces, it will land wherever it does. And if it lands where it may not, it will anger me to have to put the ball back where it was. If it bounces back to where it may not land, again, I will be more angry. If the ball bounces and lands where it may not, again, many times, I will tell the ball to stop landing where it may not, or I will kill it so it can't land anymore where it may not. So its choice is to land where it may. And if it's a ball bouncing, it'll land anywhere it may not. It doesn't. A ball bouncing doesn't have a way to a general direction. The ball won't be able to be a bird and fly in a certain direction by choosing it. The bird can choose the direction by trying to evaluate where it should go. The ball is going to bounce wherever it does. It'll go wherever it may not every time. So the thought process, or the fact that a bird can actually think in a sense or feel in a sense, it's a creature that can actually evaluate which direction I should go and choose a direction. And the ball will not be allowed to have any forethought to where to bounce. So the ball will be destroyed if it lands where it may not, and removed utterly, because it's not even being killed. It's not even alive. And if the bird's trying to land a bunch of times where it may not, truly it will be either taught to land where it may. And since it's not a ball and it's not bouncing wherever it happens to land where it may not, it's a bird, and it's told to fly in the general right direction, even if you don't know where the direction is. And don't stop or rest. Fly as long as you can in the general right direction, so you will actually get somewhere. And by the time you're really tired and you can't fly anymore, I'll tell you that if you fly in the same general direction that long, you will get somewhere. And then when you land, you truly won't know when you take off again if you're going to go back the way you came or not, because many birds will do it. They don't know where they're going, or wherever they're going, they're going to feel it, and it'll be generally south. Ultimately, the birds fly south, and you'd be surprised how many don't. Okay. Okay, God says he's a good God and a loving God if people are aware that he is a demanding God and does not take no for an answer, and not ever, which means that he says he is, if he tells you to do something, you don't have a choice to say no, but you can't dare question him. If you do, he will inform you of this fact that you're questioning him. Now, if you know that you're questioning God, or even, not doing what he wants, if you're not aware that you're even doing it, then how he tells you is in your feelings. And what you'll feel is that a judgment. You won't know where it comes from, but you'll feel like you're wrong. You won't be told what you did wrong. You'll just feel wrong and feel judged and wonder where it's coming from. And it's coming from him. So God will make you feel bad, defeated, depressed. Anything that makes you feel like giving up is just God picking on you and telling you, like, I'll take everything away from you if you don't stop questioning me, because you don't question me. I don't care what you think or feel about what I'm doing. I'm God and you're not. And ultimately, if you start to know that, it could be something you're actually not afraid of anymore. Because when you actually start to be aware that you're not allowed to question God, not one time, not ever, in one instance, it's only because once you know God and he talks to you, it's what he'll tell you. But while you're not knowing him and you never see him yet, he's going to say that you all are doing it to me constantly. So what you're doing is not only sinful and not allowed, but you're all doing it. As a whole collective group, you're questioning God constantly in disagreement with him, while you also constantly act like you agree with him. It's completely contradictory, and it's completely ridiculous. So the only reason why a person is going to be okay with it's okay. It's okay to taste death is required for life. And it will be a fact that tasting death may be something you want to do. If you can't even have a life and your life didn't even matter, anyways, death is it becomes much more, I don't know, I'm not going to say it becomes more, not something you want, but you don't want death, and neither do I. But ultimately, it's the end result of life. It's not something I will make you die forever. I will not insist you have to die forever. I will insist you learn your lessons and do what I tell you and not question me, because I am God and you are not. And ultimately, humans are questioning God constantly. Even I do it. And they're not conscious of what they're doing, but they're doing it. And God can see it, but they can't see it. So humans don't know what they're doing, but they're certainly violating everything all the time in every way, because they're constantly questioning God while they're acting like they're not. So he says they're also like pretending like they're not. They're even claiming they're not. So they're trying to have a relationship with him while they constantly question him and actually don't agree with much of what he says. So if you don't agree with God, he's not going to tell you anything he's doing or why he's doing it. And if you do agree with God, he's going to ask you, why are you agreeing with me? I'm not doing anything correct. How could you possibly agree with me? Ultimately, it's true. If you actually knew God and knew what he's doing and you didn't have all the details, you wouldn't agree with him. You would disagree with him and ask him what the hell he's doing. You're freaking torturing us all, and this world is suffering bad, and we're all in a conflict. There's wars everywhere, and none of us are happy. This whole country's not happy. None of us are happy in it. We're all freaking suffering. He'd say, yes, it's what I want. It's what I demand, and it's what shall remain to happen, and it might get worse, a lot worse. So it's like, wow. So how can we make it better? Well, I'm not God to tell you that. I'm just asking him, how can we make it better? Make a point to never question me, and not under any circumstances, no matter what it may feel like or seem like, because I am God and you are not. And what I do is okay and right. And what you are doing is okay and right. If it is doing what you're supposed to be doing, it doesn't question me under any circumstances for any reason whatsoever, ever. And that means whatever God's doing, it doesn't have to be okay with you. But yeah, maybe it does. It has to be okay with you. Because if it's not okay with you and you can see it's not okay with you, you're going to go to tell God that I don't think I'm okay with you or anything you're doing. Well, then, why would I talk to you? And why would you want to even have a relationship with me if everything I'm doing you would never do? Because you didn't tell me all the details and why you're actually doing it. And it's not what it seems to be. Oh, you're right about that. You don't know the details, do you? No, but if you tell me, I'll probably be in agreement with you that this whole world sucks and we should punish it. Well, good. And if you knew the details, you might absolutely say that, hey, God, we should punish this world. It absolutely deserves every bit of its punishment it's getting. Well, I don't have the details yet, God, of why I would say that. But I agree that if you gave me the details of why I would agree with you that we should punish the shit out of this world and make them all suffer for their whole life up to their death, if I found out the details of it, I would probably agree with you. Say, damn, they do deserve it. Are they that bad? Yes, they are.